Alexander Reed and I are notorious in the upper-class circle for being the laughingstock couple. He chased after his dream girl in a desperate frenzy, crashing into a car accident that crippled both his legs. I had a secret crush on my childhood friend for 10 years, yet never dared to confess. After we got married, we bickered every day. I mocked him, "You can't even stand up, still trying to chase after your wife like others do?" He sneered, unlike some people who can't even muster the courage to confess. When I opened my eyes again, I was transported back to my high school days. This time, I gathered my courage to confess to my childhood friend. That night, the boy with both legs intact pressed me against the wall, his eyes red-rimmed. "If you're really going to choose him," he rasped, "then consider me dead." I came across a video on TikTok of a fresh-faced high school heartthrob publicly confessing to his childhood sweetheart. I excitedly clutched my tablet and kept spamming likes. Woo woo woo, childhood sweethearts are the best. I want a relationship just like that when I turn 19. Alexander, sitting in his wheelchair, closed his documents and rubbed his temples in annoyance. "Olivia, can you keep it down?" As if recalling something, he scoffed, "You couldn't even confess back then. What makes you think you can get a relationship now?" My hand froze mid-scroll, a faint sting prickling at the tip of my nose. I have secretly had a crush on my childhood friend Ethan Davis from a young age. But I was too terrified that a failed confession would leave us unable to even remain friends. 5 years ago, Ethan left without saying goodbye to work for a company abroad. I also ended up marrying Alexander, who already had his own dream girl in heart, due to my family's bankruptcy. Thus, my decade-long unrequited love came to nothing. The more I thought about it, the sadder I became, so I got up to go back to my bedroom to sleep. As I passed by Alexander, my anger surged with every step. Who wants to imitate others chasing their wives when you can't even stand up now? You. Alexander's face instantly flushed livid with anger. In the 3 years since marrying Alexander, we found each other unbearable in every way except between the sheets. Having left him speechless, I felt a sudden sense of relief. It even made falling asleep more pleasant. I don't know how long I slept when my arm was gently nudged. Frowning, I snapped irritably, "Alexander, can you just leave me alone tonight?" Suddenly, bursts of mocking laughter erupted around me. "Ha ha ha, Olivia must have really dozed off in class. It seems the rumors on the school forum are true. She really is crazy about the academic god Alexander Reed. Yeah, she was crying her eyes out just days ago, and now she's spouting such nonsense. Class? School forum? What the hell?" I opened my eyes in a daze and saw Alexander wearing a school uniform. His fair face was tinged with a faint blush. It wasn't until the teacher threw me out of the classroom to stand in the hallway as punishment that I began to realize. I seem to have traveled back in time. I returned to my student days 10 years ago. The setting sun blazed blood red across the sky as vibrant reading voices resonated through the classroom. Through the window glass, I gazed at Alexander's intact legs beneath the desk, and the clean, white shoes on his feet that were coming apart at the seams. Who would have thought that this dirt-poor boy of few words would become a decisive and influential titan dominating the business world? The first thing I did upon returning was, of course, to happily cling to his coattails even if I can't get close to him. Building some goodwill would do. During lunch in the cafeteria, I walked straight over and sat down across from Alexander. The boy raised his dark eyes and met my gaze. "Need something?" I took out my phone, opened the school forum, and pulled up a post. I slid it in front of Alexander. The school beauty Sophie Miller intercepted Alexander Reed to confess her feelings, while Olivia, seemingly heartbroken, was lying on the nearby grass, crying her eyes out. The forum's comment section had hundreds of comment threads. In the morning, high school memories grew increasingly vivid in my mind. The first thing that came to mind was this inexplicable post. I don't know which inconsiderate alumnus had such a wild imagination to come up with that title. With such a vivid imagination, why don't you go write a novel instead? During my senior year of high school, overwhelmed by academic pressure, I would rush behind the teaching building after school daily to feed stray cats. Over time, the cat transitioned from initial wariness to actively rubbing against my pant leg. Later, the cat was poisoned to death, and I burst into uncontrollable sobs while burying it. I was completely unaware that someone nearby was pouring their heart out in a confession. The girl who confessed was my sworn enemy and Alexander's eternal love, Sophie Miller. After marrying Alexander, I heard from his personal assistant that he got into a car accident while chasing the high-speed train out of love upon learning Sophie was going abroad to get married. Even in a coma, he was mumbling 2 words, Sophie. Sophie. But I know Sophie Miller all too well. She has an innocent face, but takes pleasure in watching underprivileged students vie for her attention. Privately, she would even say in front of her friends, watching those poor people sink deeper and deeper for me gives me this unspeakable sense of accomplishment. After explaining the forum incident, I felt parched and took a sip of mineral water from the dining table. Alexander remained expressionless, giving no indication of whether he believed me. After a long pause, he uttered indifferently, "Oh, you're drinking my water," he said. Alexander was strapped for cash, while I had more money than I knew what to do with. I hired him at a generous rate to tutor me after school. Every day, I would deliberately steer clear of Sophie Miller. This time, I didn't want to see Alexander break his leg again. Because ever since marrying him, even though he didn't love me and often bickered with me, he never once treated me poorly. Knowing that I married him solely to save my father's failing company, he agreed without hesitation. After we arrived at the library, Alexander seemed a bit uncomfortable. His long lashes drooped lazily while his slender fingers gently massaged his brow. I spread open the book and asked with gossipy curiosity, "Do you like the girl who confessed to you that day?" Alexander lowered his gaze, his emotions unreadable. "Why do you ask?" I shook my head and opened my stationery pouch. "It's nothing. Just wanted to let you know. No matter how deeply you care for her, always put your own safety first from now on." Consider it a word of advice for Alexander. His dark eyes remained calm, as though he didn't comprehend what I was trying to convey. In that moment, I felt a surge of rather despicable emotion within me. Perhaps in my eyes, Sophie wasn't a good person. But what if Sophie was the one Alexander would sacrifice everything for in his heart? The atmosphere turned awkward, so I randomly pointed at a physics problem. "Let's cut the small talk. I can't figure out this problem. Could you help explain it to me?" Alexander picked up a pen, scanned the question, and began writing on scratch paper. He carefully explained each step and the formulas needed. Outside the window, snow was falling, his knuckles whitening from the cold as they gripped the pen. His slender, beautiful hands bore a few chilblains. All right, I get it now." I quickly snatched the pen from his hand and casually slipped a hand warmer into his arms. He froze for a moment. Once he regained his composure, he only dared to keep his hands on the outer layer for warmth. Was the young Alexander really this docile? The Alexander the first married, who chattered nonstop, must have been an imposter, right? After solving one problem, I casually pointed to another question in the book. "I can't solve this physics problem either, Alexander. Can you help me out?" Alexander picked up the pen and casually inquired while explaining, "Didn't you say you loathed physics most of all?" As soon as he said that, he seemed to feel it was inappropriate and quickly added, "I've heard you complain to your friends about it every day." I lowered my eyes. "I want to apply to a university abroad to meet a friend." The person across from me suddenly paused, his knuckles whitening. Alexander frowned, his expression cooling abruptly. He put down the pen and spoke in a detached tone, "I won't do the rest." "Me? You're lying. I just saw him solve that problem in 3 minutes. And you're a genius. Are you kidding me?" Just as he would 10 years later, Alexander's temper would flare up without warning. I could never understand him. The atmosphere grew chilly, and suddenly my phone on the table rang twice. It was a message from Ethan. "Olivia, I'm coming back to China the day after tomorrow. Can you come pick me up?" Ethan returned to China this time to deliver a speech as an outstanding graduate at his school. More than half of the students at the school were present. I sat in the front row, watching the striking figures standing at the podium. The girls next to me were whispering excitedly, "Senior Ethan is so handsome. Do you think he has a girlfriend?" "You can forget it." I heard the girls Ethan has rejected could form a line stretching from here to France. He's so handsome. Who could resist having a heartbeat? I also like Ethan, just like most girls experiencing their first crush. Since I can remember, Ethan has always been the most dazzling among all my playmates. In terms of academics, appearance, family background, and character, he was exceptional in every aspect. Almost every girl I knew had confessed to him. I clearly remember one time when a girl from our childhood circle confessed her feelings to Ethan in front of everyone. Ethan, annoyed, leaned back on the sofa and hooked his arm around my neck. Every one of you gets close to me with ulterior motives, huh? It seems only our Olivia genuinely regards me as her brother. I sipped my juice, guiltily lowering my head. In fact, I was the one with ulterior motives, just too shy to confess. Looking at the girl's crestfallen expression, I felt an even deeper pang of sorrow. A failed confession meant losing even the chance to remain friends. The sound of applause pulled me back to reality. The speech had ended. Ethan walked over to me. After talking for so long, I'm starving. I went to the cafeteria with Ethan. While we were eating, many people kept glancing over at our table. I absolutely hated those scrutinizing looks. Even while clearing our trays, people kept glancing our way repeatedly. As we walked out of the cafeteria, I muttered my complaints under my breath. There are just too many people who like you. Everywhere we go, it feels like we're in a gorilla exhibit at the zoo. Although my voice was soft, Ethan still caught it. He suddenly asked me, "What about Olivia? Do you like me?" I looked up in disbelief, meeting Ethan's eyes that sparkled with a smile. That direct gaze planted an illusion in my mind I couldn't suppress. Could it be that he also likes me? Lost in that distraction, I forgot I was going down the stairs. My foot slipped, and I crashed down hard onto the ground. The staircase was long. If it weren't for Ethan's quick reflexes catching me, I might have ended up in the ICU drinking broth today. Fortunately, it was just a scraped ankle with a bit of skin torn off and a slight twist. The school nurse applied some ointment to my scrape, and it hurt so much that I couldn't help but tear up. After applying the ointment, the school doctor asked us to stay for observation. Ethan sat on the chair by the bed, leafing through my recent exam papers. Your grades have improved quite a bit. Do you have a university in mind? I also heard you have someone you like? Ethan is on our school's forum. I awkwardly shook my head. No, they're just making things up. As for university, I haven't figured it out yet. Ethan closed my exam papers, a faint smile curling at the corners of his lips. Then come to my university. I'll wait for you, Olivia. Those few words made my head spin. While he stepped out to take the call, I gradually collected my thoughts. What did Ethan mean by that? If I was just hearing things before I fell, this surely can't be another illusion now, can it? Just as my mind was tangled in chaos, an anxious female voice rang out at the school infirmary doorway. Mr. Nurse, Alexander has a really bad headache. Could you please come check on him right away? It was Sophie Miller, immediately followed by Alexander's voice. No need, I'll just lie down and rest through this class period. Sophie sounded so anxious it was as if she were about to burst into tears. That can't be right. There was a rustling sound from the other side, as if the doctor was examining Alexander. While the school doctor was preparing the medication, Sophie's bashful voice drifted through the curtain again. Alexander, did you reject my confession because you like Olivia? The air fell silent for a few seconds as I clutched the bedsheet, pretending not to exist. After a long silence, Alexander's raspy voice sounded from the adjacent bed. He said no. Sophie's lips curved into a smile. I'm relieved. In that moment, I inexplicably tasted bitterness in my mouth. I couldn't even figure out where this bitterness came from. My wound became infected, and the next morning I developed a fever. It was Ethan who took me to request sick leave. I stood at the entrance to the stairwell, head heavy and foggy, waiting for him to take me home. Not long after the school bell rang, Alexander emerged from a classroom at the far end of the corridor, holding a math competition registration form. I lowered my gaze, staring blankly at the white gauze bandage wrapping my injured ankle. Suddenly, a looming shadow enveloped me. Alexander's clear, crystalline voice sounded above me. The final exams are coming up. Do you need me to come to your house after school for tutoring? I looked up, my voice hoarse and barely audible. No, thank you. Just then, Ethan emerged from the dean's office holding the sick leave permit. He supported me as we walked forward, walking away from the person standing behind us in opposite directions. I thought, if we were to start over, perhaps we wouldn't cross paths again, would we? I hope Alexander took in what I said to him before. After the new semester began, students were allowed to choose their seats based on final exam rankings, with Alexander being the first to select. Students chose their seats based on their final exam results. Alexander was the first to choose. He walked into the classroom and went straight back to his original seat. The seats were arranged in the middle row on the right side of the classroom by the window. When it was my turn, I chose the seat by the window at the far right end of the third row. Looking out, I saw rows of cherry blossom trees in the courtyard. When they bloom in late March, the view will be absolutely breathtaking. Since then, I haven't actively spoken to Alexander beyond a few words. The only thing I heard was at the awards ceremony when I learned he'd won yet another math competition. This year, the school's guaranteed admission spot was unquestionably his. Yet, after receiving the competition prize, he still took the college entrance exam, willingly gave up his guaranteed admission spot to another classmate. He probably wanted to attend the same university as Sophie. But none of this was my concern anymore. On the day the college entrance examination ended, I felt for the first time the tangible reality of having been reborn into a second life. The bell rang, and the liberating wind swept over me. I walked out of the examination hall. Watching a female classmate dash into her boyfriend's arms with a radiant smile, I suddenly realized that it seemed like I had never dated anyone before getting married to Alexander. Had I really never been in a relationship and just married Alexander? Olivia, here. Ethan stood not far away, calling out to me loudly alongside my family. I suddenly recalled that during the 2-day break before the college entrance exam, my deskmate had taken up fortune-telling. My deskmate started practicing divination during the 2-day break before the college entrance exams. She said, "Olivia, this month is auspicious for love, with your confession success rate reaching 80%. Was this a reminder from the heavens, urging me to make up for future regrets? Then I will boldly give it a try, regardless of the outcome." The result was that after the college entrance exam, my deskmate Emma and I went out to indulge ourselves for days before it finally occurred to me that I needed to make the confession. It was Ethan who took the initiative to message me. "Want to go out tonight? Sorry, I have a class reunion with my high school friends tonight. Message me when the reunion ends, and I'll come pick you up." Okay. The sultry night hummed with restlessness. I deliberately put on makeup and wore a black princess dress I had bought yesterday while shopping with Emma. It was a style I had never ventured into before. When I arrived at the private room, the gathering was already in full swing. I found a corner seat and settled in. Emma made her way through the crowd and playfully bumped my shoulder. "Oh my God, I knew you'd look stunning in that dress. You always come off as such a typical goody two-shoes in your school uniform. Who would have guessed you had such a killer figure? Not to mention the guy you're going to confess to, I'm practically in love with you myself. Haven't you told me whether he's from our class?" She grew more and more animated, drawing curious glances from classmates around us. "Keep your voice down." I hurriedly covered her mouth with a should gesture. In my fluster, my gaze darted around and suddenly locked eyes with Alexander sitting in the corner not far away. Doesn't he usually skip this kind of class reunion? At an inopportune moment, I remembered our last marital argument. Alexander's biting retort shot through the air. "If you can't even muster a confession, what makes you think you could handle a relationship?" I had never told anyone about my feelings for Ethan, not even Ethan himself. But how did Alexander know I liked Ethan? Before I could think, Emma pressed again. "Which class is he in?" I took a small sip of fruit wine from the table. "He doesn't go to our school." By the time the reunion was well underway, I had downed 3 full glasses of fruit wine. It was enough to give me courage, but not enough to get me too drunk. I heard someone clamoring to change venues for dinner. I checked the time and saw it was already quite late. After saying goodbye to the student in charge, I stepped out of the private room. Just as I hesitated whether to message Ethan, a hand yanked me into the stairwell. It was Alexander. Not a threat. My guard instantly dissolved. He reeked of alcohol, and I could sense that he was in a bad mood. Alexander, are you angry? Who provoked him? Alexander suddenly closed in on me with a derisive snort. Are you referring to the 19-year-old Alexander or the 27-year-old one? In that moment, it felt as if my head had been struck hard with a wooden mallet. Could it be that Alexander also traveled back? With the dim light in the stairwell, I looked closer. Although he was wearing a plain t-shirt, there was not a trace of boyishness in those slightly bloodshot eyes. Only anger and the pride befitting someone in a position of authority remained. I didn't even know how to face him, my hand clutching the bag tightening slightly. When did you time travel back? Just now. He had just returned when he heard the news that she was going to confess her feelings to someone else. A surge of frustration welled up inside him, with nowhere to vent it. The 19-year-old Alexander was furious, and the 27-year-old Alexander was even more enraged. I pouted. What are you angry about? I didn't do anything wrong. We were once married, but now we're not. We might as well each find our own. Before I could finish speaking, his cold lips abruptly silenced me. Rather than a kiss, it was more like a biting assault. The metallic tang of blood spread between our lips. The pain made me jerk back, but I was pressed against the unyielding cold wall. The man in front of me wouldn't budge no matter how hard I pushed. I don't know how long it took before he finally let go of me. My lip was split and I was sobbing in pain. Alexander, why are you treating me like this? His grip on my arm tightened, his tone icy. If you really want to be with that guy, do you think I'm dead? I didn't speak, just kept crying helplessly. But he pressed me. Olivia, do you hate me? Do I hate him? At least in this moment, I absolutely do. Under the influence of alcohol, I couldn't understand why Alexander, who already had someone he loved, still wouldn't let me go. Before I could answer him, Alexander kissed me again with alcohol-laden breath. In the cramped space, a heady mix of tension and intoxication kept building. As our lips and teeth mingled, I heard him say, "But even if you hate me, I still don't want to stop." That night ended with me slapping Alexander. After telling Ethan that my family was sending someone to pick me up, the more I thought about it, the more annoyed I felt. Alexander had deliberately bitten my lip, ruining my confession plan entirely. The next morning, when I turned on my phone, I was bombarded with a flood of messages, all from one person. No matter what you think, as far as I'm concerned, we're still married. If you want to be with Ethan, just forget about it. Marriage Law Article 1041. Marriage and family are protected by the state, implementing marriage freedom, monogamy, and a marriage system of equality between men and women. Marriage Law Article 1042 prohibits bigamy, prohibits a married person from cohabiting with others, prohibits domestic violence, prohibits abuse and abandonment among family members. Olivia, did you see? The last 3 messages caught my attention. They were sent at 7 in the morning. Are you awake? Does it still hurt? Calm down. I bought ointment. So, after sending me home last night, has he been here all along? I pulled back the curtains and there he was, sitting on the bench downstairs, just as I'd expected. I went downstairs and casually grabbed a cup of freshly squeezed soy milk. Finish it and go home to sleep, I told myself. If it weren't for the fear that he might actually die downstairs, I wouldn't be so kind. He took the soy milk from me. I glanced sideways and noticed the bruise at the corner of his mouth was more severe than mine. Is this guy a dog? He even bit himself just to bite me. I spoke up, Alexander, in 10 years we'll both be carrying others in our hearts while sharing a household. Why repeat the same mistake now that we've come back? Alexander cut me off coldly. Stop thinking about it. I said you can only be with me, I snapped, trembling with the urge to stamp my foot. Why are you so domineering? You're dying for Sophie, yet you won't let me pursue my own happiness. Alexander furrowed his brows. I didn't like Sophie. I was there when you and Sophie were in the school infirmary that day. I heard every word of your conversation. You said you didn't like me yourself, so what right do you have to control me? Alexander was speechless. When had he ever said he didn't like Olivia? Soon, he caught onto the misunderstanding. Olivia. What I meant by, no, is that I didn't reject her because I like you, but even without you, I would still have rejected her. I had a terrible headache then and couldn't be bothered to elaborate. If I had known you were there, I would have made myself completely clear. It was going around in circles, giving me a headache. I don't believe a word you say, I muttered, pursing my lips as I rose to head home for a morning snooze. Olivia, Alexander called out to me. I stopped. My leg has healed. I can stand now. A faint breeze whispered past my ear. I heard his voice, which concealed a barely perceptible tremor. When we sent Ethan abroad, both our families were there. As he went through security, he turned back and smiled at me. On my way back, I thought a lot. It seemed that before my rebirth, Ethan had also said something like this to me. But that was said to the original 18-year-old Olivia. At the time, Olivia couldn't comprehend it, nor did she dare to. That night, even with liquid courage, I probably still couldn't have confessed. Even if I returned to my high school days, my mentality was no longer that of an 18 or 19-year-old girl. The 18-year-old Olivia's heart would race at the sight of Ethan's face, yearning to be with him. But the 26-year-old Olivia instinctively overthinks. For example, Ethan's ambitions lay overseas, determined to carve out an extraordinary career. I don't want to live too far from home, and my ambitions are fairly modest. He enjoys rock climbing and racing sports during his free time, while I prefer to stay at home gardening. His gentle demeanor is merely a facade, concealing a ruthless underbelly known to none. I am his opposite. From the moment I reunited with him at the airport, perhaps I should have realized that Ethan and I were not meant for each other. I might have fallen for someone else without even realizing it. As I exited the airport, my shoulder was bumped by a beggar coming head-on toward me. He was in a hurry, but still managed to turn his face and offer an apology. Sorry about that. I twitched the corners of my mouth. It's fine. His face looked familiar, but I couldn't recall where I'd seen him before, no matter how hard I racked my brain. His figure grew distant and disappeared into the vast crowd. That night, I dreamed about my own kidnapping. In the dream, it was during my junior year of college. The police described it as a highly perilous kidnapping, but I had simply slept through the entire ordeal. In my junior year, I was walking down the street when two strangers suddenly abducted me. However, my memory was limited to being drugged and bound in the back seat. When I woke up, I found myself completely unharmed in the hospital. The police stood by my hospital bed, explaining to my parents how extremely perilous the situation had been. Those two fugitives had been on the run for 5 or 6 years and had recently caught police attention again. They intended to take someone hostage in another attempt to escape. And I was the unlucky hostage. If their escape plan failed, they would surely kill me without hesitation to take the fall. Fortunately, their car crashed on the road, leaving one dead and another critically injured. They were apprehended by the police on the spot. The angle of the collision was particularly fortuitous, resulting in minimal damage to the back seat. So I emerged completely unscathed. Just as I was secretly relieved, the dreamscape abruptly shifted. In the kidnapper's car, I was bound and unconscious in the back seat. The kidnapper in the passenger seat glanced nervously at the rearview mirror. Boss, besides the police cars behind us, there's a goddamn sports car tailing us out there. The kidnapper at the wheel kept his gaze fixed ahead, forcing a sinister grin like a demon's. Who cares? Once we get past this stretch of road, we can shake them off. As the car neared the approaching fork in the road, that sports car suddenly accelerated and crashed violently into the kidnapper's vehicle at a speed beyond anyone's reaction. The roar of the crash, police sirens, and shouts all flooded into my mind. Countless police officers closed in. Amid the billowing dust, I clearly recognized the person in the driver's seat of that sports car. Alexander Reed. Blood was streaming down his forehead as he lay unconscious. I rushed forward desperately, trying to save him. But throughout it all, I remained merely an immobilized spectator, unable to move. The scene shifted once more to the hospital. This time, I saw Alexander's personal secretary, James. The surgery light went out. The doctor came out and shook his head at James. He said, Mr. Reed's leg ultimately couldn't be saved. At 1 a.m., I jolted awake. I wanted to convince myself that it was just a dream. But the entire dream felt so vivid and real that even when I recalled it after waking, I felt my blood run cold. I picked up my phone to type, my hands trembling. Alexander, I need to see you. He replied instantly, get dressed and come downstairs in 20 minutes. No, send me your location. I need to come to you. He seemed to be typing for a long time, as if struggling with something. Finally, he sent me a location. When I saw Alexander, he stood beneath the street lamp at the alley entrance. He was tall and strikingly noticeable. When he saw me get out of the car, he strode toward me. My throat tightened, and I fought back tears. How did your leg get injured in your previous life? It wasn't because you were chasing a high-speed train, but because you were saving me, right? Alexander didn't say a word, his steps abruptly halting. He seemed surprised at how I knew. If I don't ask, you'd never explain in your lifetime, would you? This time, he answered without hesitation. Yes. My eyes turned red with anger, but I didn't know how to start. We had been locked in a tense silence for what felt like an eternity when Alexander abruptly furrowed his brows. He pulled me forward, and my feet felt as heavy as lead. Alexander pressed me down onto a roadside bench. Take a seat first. He took a bottle of mosquito repellent out of his shorts pocket. I lowered my gaze and noticed several large mosquito bite welts on my calves. He knelt down and carefully applied it to the bites. My nose tingled even more, and I asked him, why do you carry this around? You said you were coming, and this place is crawling with mosquitoes. I bought it at the convenience store by the roadside. While applying the medicine, he hesitated briefly before confessing, I kept it from you because I didn't want you coming to me out of guilt. What I want is for you to genuinely like me. But after I found out, all I felt was heartache. I muttered, I'm not the kind of person who stays with someone out of guilt. Alexander was too perceptive to miss the subtext in my words. From my angle, I could just catch sight of his flushed neck. After a silence so long it left me somewhat anxious, Alexander finally set down the bottle of mosquito repellent. He sat down beside me. The results come out the day after tomorrow. Which university are you thinking of? I haven't decided yet, but I want to study medicine this time. After a moment of careful thought, Alexander quickly settled on a destination. Let's go to university in Bay City. It's close to home and has suitable universities with majors that fit us both. After the results came out, my actual score exceeded my own estimate by over 40 points. I was admitted to the best medical school at Bay University. On the first day of my freshman year, Alexander accompanied me to the university. He started classes 2 days later than I did. To prevent any future kidnapping incidents, Alexander bought a house near our university for us. On days with more classes, he stayed at the dorm. On days with fewer, he went home. Even though I knew about his remarkable business acumen, I was still astonished to discover he'd earned enough for a house purchase during a single summer break. On the way to campus, I sat in the passenger seat, stealing occasional glances at him. Alexander wore a black shirt today that subtly revealed his collarbone, accentuating his sharply defined jawline. I pursed my dry lips. My inner shallow self was going into overdrive. Yet, I felt something wasn't quite right. Alexander. Are you trying to peacock today? At the red light, Alexander turned to look at me. Didn't I dress like this back home? I thought about it, and it really did seem to be the case. Alexander is a shirt enthusiast. More than half of his wardrobe consists of shirts, mostly black and white. Maybe I had just gotten used to his high school style. But why hadn't I noticed how good-looking Alexander was before? Once we entered the campus, he pulled his suitcase with one hand and held my hand with the other. He left only after finishing everything. As expected, that afternoon, he was the most talked about person on the campus forum. He's so handsome I'm literally dying. Huh? Are you serious? Big Sock 123 upstairs. I know him. He's my roommate's cousin's classmate. Who gets it, fam? Now he's the hot guy in a campus romance, and he didn't even make it back in high school. When I came across it, I casually forwarded the post to Alexander. You're quite the crowd magnet. I added a sarcastic emoji. 10 minutes later, Alexander forwarded the post to me again. I clicked into it. The post had been updated with a follow-up. Everyone, just move along. This one's from the school next door. They've already been spoken for. The screenshot was an Instagram post from Alexander's account, showing a close-up selfie of us together. They're such a perfect match, and the girl is absolutely stunning. I knew someone as devastatingly handsome as him must have a girlfriend. If not a girlfriend, then definitely a boyfriend. I knew I was just a side character in someone else's love story. After this entire series of events, practically everyone at orientation knew I was dating Alexander from the neighboring school. I must admit, when it comes to cunning schemes, I could never match Alexander. During the fall break holiday, Alexander saw me off at the train station. After arriving home, I texted him to confirm my safe arrival. "I'm here. Happy holiday." He instantly replied, "Baby, happy holiday." I sat on the sofa and thought carefully. It seemed like every holiday in my previous life, except for Valentine's Day and our wedding anniversary, Alexander would always use work commitments as an excuse to send me back to spend time with my family. I once thought it was because he didn't like me, but upon careful thought, I vaguely sensed he must be hiding something from me. After informing my parents, I purchased the earliest available ticket to Bay City. The two cities weren't particularly far apart, just a 3-hour ride on the express train. After entering the room, I hid my shoes and climbed into the wardrobe. Through the gap in the wardrobe, I could see into the living room. 10 minutes later, a rustling sound came from the door as Alexander returned. He put down the things he was carrying, opened his laptop, then went to the kitchen to boil water. I took out my phone and texted him, "Alexander, what are you up to?" Then I saw him skillfully preparing instant noodles as he replied, "I'm out having a feast with friends." Lies have legs, Alexander read. Turn around and look. He suddenly froze and actually turned around to look. He seemed to realize how foolish he looked being tricked and let out a soft, wistful chuckle. I carefully opened the wardrobe door and tiptoed to Alexander's side. Not only was he not startled by me, but he actually flipped me onto the sofa before I could even attempt to scare him. I asked him, "How did you notice?" Alexander gestured with his eyes toward the mirror opposite the bedroom. "Why did you never spend holidays with me before?" Alexander's smile was strained. "I grew up under someone else's roof. I moved out on my own in middle school and hardly celebrated any holidays. I was afraid you'd find spending them with me boring. A humble person loves others cautiously." I swallowed the bitterness that welled up in my throat. "Why don't you go out to dinner with friends? Instead, you stay home working, too busy to even cook. Olivia, I can't wait to marry you." His voice was tinged with deep weariness. I had him lie down on my lap. "Stop talking. Just lie down and get some rest." Before I could finish speaking, my stomach growled at the worst possible moment. I hadn't eaten lunch and had been on the express train for hours. Of course I was starving. Alexander's face instantly brightened with amusement. I flushed red and hastily clapped a hand over his mouth. "Don't laugh." Alexander stood up and took his coat. "Then shall we go buy groceries together?" he said, and off we went. After dinner, Alexander was about to resume programming. I deliberately teased him with a kiss that lasted over 10 minutes. Feeling his scorching body heat, I deliberately pushed him away. "All right, you go ahead and get busy." Alexander was completely defeated. "It'll be the same whether I work now or later." He straightened up and undid his cufflinks. As if something had occurred to him, he paused mid-movement. Alexander pulled me up from the sofa with a hoarse voice. "Baby, go put on that little black dress." "Huh? What little black dress?" I was confused. The next second, Alexander chuckled awkwardly. "You really do look stunning in that dress." The words, "looks good," were practically forced through clenched teeth. The corners of my mouth twitched. So that incident just can't be dropped, can it? That night, Alexander never did return to coding.